The world of Red Dead Redemption 2 is often remembered for its gunfights and robberies and the dramatic story of outlaws trying to survive in a changing world. But beyond the chaos of the frontier, there is another side to this world. Quieter one. A world that moves slowly. A world filled with drifting fog over rivers, distant train whistles, and small towns waking up under pale morning light. Tonight, we're going to leave the gunfights behind. Instead, we'll wander through the forgotten corners of this vast frontier, exploring the people, places, and quiet stories that exist in the background of the world. We'll travel through the dusty streets of Valentine, listen to the distant wildlife in the forests of the Grizzlies, and sit beside the quiet campfires where the members of the Linde gang once shared stories beneath the stars. This isn't a story about action. It's about atmosphere. It's about the slow rhythm of life on the American frontier, where every town has a history, every road leads somewhere, and every landscape carries the memory of those who once passed through it. So dim the lights and settle in, and let the quiet world of Red Dead Redemption 2 slowly unfold. Tonight, we explore its lore, and maybe somewhere along the way, you'll drift off to sleep. Picture yourself standing in tall grass that comes to your waist, the stems bending slightly in a wind that comes from the west and carries the smell of rain that hasn't arrived yet. The sky above you is the particular blue of late afternoon, a blue so deep and so uncomplicated that looking at it for too long produces a feeling close to vertigo, close to peace. The year is 1899. The American frontier is not gone yet. Wide and breathing and extraordinary. More land than a person can imagine. More sky than any painting has ever managed to hold. More life packed into every square mile than a lifetime of walking would be enough to catalog. This is the world we are entering tonight. The country of the American interior in 1899 is not one thing. It is many things arranged side by side with the casual disregard for consistency that only geography can achieve. 50 miles east of a desert you will find a temperate forest. 100 miles north of a bayou you will find snowfields. The rivers connect everything. Running from high mountain snowmelt down through forests and plains and wetlands to the sea, carrying silt and seeds and the cold memory of the mountains with them all the way to the coast. Let us begin in the south. The bayou country of Lemoyne exists in a different quality of time than the rest of the territory. The air here is thick and green and warm, and the sounds of it are layered in a way that rewards the attentive ear. The frogs are everywhere, in numbers that seem impossible until you understand that every square foot of standing water is a world unto itself, and every world has its inhabitants. Their calls overlap and interlace in a kind of unscripted music that has no beginning and no end, that has been playing in these wetlands since long before any human ear was here to hear it. Beneath the frog chorus is the water itself, moving so slowly that in many places it seems not to move at all, only the faintest dimpling of its surface betraying the slight current that is always present, always patient. The bayou water is dark, almost the color of strong tea, stained by the tannins from the cypress trees that have stood in these waters for decades, sometimes even centuries. Their roots push up through the water in knotted shapes known as knees, rising around the base of each trunk like a small gathering of strange figures. Spanish moss hangs from almost everything that can support it. It drapes from the branches of the cypress trees and from the wide arms of the live oaks along the edge of the bayou, whose limbs stretch outward as if reaching toward the opposite bank. Even the occasional structure built too close to the water is slowly claimed by the moss over time. When a breeze moves through the trees, the moss sways gently, like a slow curtain. In daylight it appears silver-gray, but at night it almost seems to glow, catching moonlight and starlight and holding it softly in the darkness. An alligator rests on a muddy bank beside the channel. It has been there since before noon, and it may remain there until morning. For the alligator, time moves differently. It isn't something to manage or rush against. It simply exists within it. Time surrounds the alligator the same way water surrounds a fish, and it moves through it quietly without effort. As the alligator lies in the mud, with the warmth of the afternoon still stored in the earth beneath it, it is doing something very close to sleep, a deep kind of rest, the body slowing down, conserving energy, letting the world move on around it. There is something peaceful about watching it, something that quietly reminds the body that stillness is allowed, that it's all right to pause. The world will keep turning even if you step back from it for a while. The egrets that hunt in the shallow waters of the bayou are among the most striking sights in this landscape. Against the dark water and shadowed trees, their white feathers almost seem to glow. They stand in the shallows on long legs the color of faded gold, completely still for minutes at a time, a level of patience most creatures rarely achieve. And then, suddenly, their neck snaps forward, the beak pierces the water, and a small fish is lifted out and swallowed in one smooth motion. Just as quickly, the stillness returns. The water settles again. The egret resumes its quiet watch. In the cypress swamps, wood ducks move through the trees and water. Their colors are so vivid they almost look painted. The males with shimmering green and purple heads, bright markings of red and white, and deep chestnut feathers along the chest. They build their nests in tree cavities above the water. In spring, their ducklings take an extraordinary first step into the world. They leap from the nest opening, sometimes 20 feet or more above the water, bouncing harmlessly below before paddling after their mother through the winding channels, trusting her completely. When night arrives, the bayou slowly changes. The daytime animals begin to settle. Herons return to their roosting trees. Ducks tuck their heads beneath their wings while floating gently on patches of vegetation. And then the night shift begins. Barred owls call out from deep within the cypress trees, their voices echoing through the dark woods. Along the water's edge, raccoons begin their nightly searches, using their clever hands to explore every rock, root, and crevice for food. Bats rise into the night sky, weaving through the air in quick, precise movements as they hunt insects in the darkness. And then there are the fireflies. During the summer months, the fireflies of the bayou create one of nature's quiet spectacles. As dusk settles in, they begin to appear, one small flash at first, then another, like the earliest stars in the evening sky. Soon they are everywhere. In the branches of the trees, among the tall grasses at the water's edge, drifting over the open water. Their small green lights rise and fall gently in the darkness. Each flash is a signal, each signal a message. Together, they create a soft living glow that makes the bayou at dusk one of the most beautiful places a person can quietly witness. People who live near the bayou often stop to watch them. Even those who have seen the fireflies for decades still pause when they appear, because there is something about them that never becomes ordinary, something that always asks to be noticed. The rivers of this territory are its circulatory system. Everything depends on them. The Dakota River runs through the center of the heartlands, and it is a working river, wide enough to carry freight, cold enough to keep its fish through summer, bordered by the kind of bottomland vegetation that means the land near rivers is always the most productive, always the most contested. Cottonwood trees grow along its banks, their leaves shivering and chattering in any breeze, silver green on their undersides. Willows trail their long fingers in the water at the shallower bends. A man named Thomas has fished the Dakota River for 32 years. He came to it first as a young man, following a rumor about the trout fishing, and the rumor was correct and he never entirely left. He lives in a small cabin a quarter-mile from the water, close enough to hear it on quiet nights, which is a comfort he has come to depend on without quite noticing the dependence. Thomas knows the river in the way that comes only from decades of attentive presence. He knows where the large trout hold in different seasons. In summer, deep in the shade of overhanging banks where the water stays cold. In fall, moving into the shallower riffles as the temperature drops and the salmon begin their runs from the lake. He knows which bends collect the insects that trout feed on, and at what time of day, and in which direction to cast to put a fly in front of a feeding fish without the line spooking it. He goes to the river before dawn most mornings. He walks the familiar path from his cabin to the water in the dark, a path his feet know so completely that he could walk it in his sleep and perhaps has. He carries a fly rod his father gave him that has been repaired so many times it is almost a philosophical question whether it is still the same rod. He carries a canvas creel and a small box of flies that he ties himself through the winter months, working at his kitchen table by lamplight with materials spread around him in a controlled scatter. At the river in the pre-dawn dark, he stands on a gravel bar and listens. The sound of river is not one sound but a combination of many sounds. The deep bass note of the main current, the higher chatter of the riffle below the bar, the occasional plunk of a stone shifting in the current, the almost inaudible hum of water moving over sand. Thomas has been listening to this river for 32 years, and the sound of it still makes something in him settle and grow quiet. Something that is perhaps always slightly wound when he is not near water. Before the light is fully up, the birds begin. The song sparrows are first, usually a thin, exploratory phrase repeated a few times, as if they are testing the morning. Then the robins, whose song is so common that most people stop hearing it, which Thomas thinks is a mistake. By the time the light has fully arrived and the first hatching insects are visible on the surface of the water, Thomas has usually caught and released 2 or 3 fish and is ready to sit on the gravel bar and simply be present for a while. He is not a man of many words. He does not have a great deal to say about what the river means to him, but the fact that he has come back to it every morning for 32 years says it clearly enough. The Flatiron Lake is the great water of West Elizabeth, and it is large enough to have weather of its own. On calm mornings its surface is a perfect mirror, the sky and clouds and surrounding hills reflected with such precision that the reflection somehow seems more real than the reality above it. The water in these conditions is a particular blue that does not exist anywhere else. Fishing boats go out in the morning, mostly small boats, a man alone or with one companion, rowing out to the deeper water, dropping lines and waiting with the patience that water seems to require of everyone who engages with it. The sound of oars in their locks, the occasional creak of a wooden hull, a fish jumping somewhere and the subsequent splash and silence. A loon calling from the far shore with its hollow and beautiful voice. The loon is worth a moment's attention. The common loon is one of the oldest birds on this continent, related to diving birds that were present before the extinction of the dinosaurs, an evolutionary form so successful that it has needed very little adjustment in 60 million years. It is built for diving. Its legs are set so far back on its body that it is nearly helpless on land, but in the water it is extraordinary, capable of diving to depths of 200 feet, staying submerged for minutes, pursuing fish with a speed and maneuverability that seems impossible for a bird its size. This call carries across the water on still mornings for miles. For many who hear it, the sound creates a quiet blend of sadness and wonder, a response that may reach back to something ancient in human memory. Hearing it across the still surface of the flat iron lake in early morning, with the mist still on the water and the mountains reflected in it, is one of the finer experiences this territory offers. It is free. It is available to anyone who is present at the right time. Most people are still asleep when it happens, which is a loss that the loon is entirely unaware of and entirely untroubled by. The flat iron lake eventually feeds into a series of smaller rivers and streams that drain west and south through the big valley. And these smaller waterways have their own character. They are faster and more energetic than the lake, moving through a landscape of meadows and willows and the occasional beaver pond. Beavers have been at work in the big valley for a long time. Their dams built from branches and mud back the stream water up into broad and shallow ponds that transform the land around them. The standing water kills the terrestrial vegetation and creates new habitat, drawing in ducks and herons and muskrats, and the particular assembly of species that a beaver pond supports. The beavers themselves are rarely visible in daylight. They are cautious animals, preferring the hours of dusk and dawn, and their engineering is more visible than they are. The dams are remarkable structures, solid, functional, and maintained continuously. A properly maintained beaver dam can persist for decades. The sound of a beaver pond in the evening is a layered and lovely thing. Water flows gently over the dam, creating a soft, steady murmur. Red-winged blackbirds call from the cattails along the edge of the pond. Now and then, the sharp slap of a beaver's tail strikes the water, a warning signal that announces presence to any others nearby. Then, for a moment, everything goes quiet, and slowly, the familiar sounds begin again, as the disturbance fades and the pond returns to its quiet, ordinary rhythm. The Grizzly Mountains stand to the north of New Hanover, and they are not gentle. They are the kind of mountains that were made by forces operating on timescales that render human history invisible. These landscapes were shaped by the slow movement of continental plates, where immense forces pushed rock upward over vast stretches of time. Pressures so great the word itself barely captures them. What emerged from that process is dramatic, and in its own way beautiful. Sharp ridgelines cut across the horizon. Bowl-shaped basins, once carved by glaciers that have long since melted away. Slopes of broken stone that slowly shift and settle over centuries. And high alpine meadows that feel distant and quiet, even when you are standing right in the middle of them. The approach to the Grizzlies from the east begins gradually. The plains of New Hanover give way to foothills. Heavily forested, the trees get dense as you climb. The air cools degree by degree with every 100 feet of elevation gained. The forests here are spruce, and their silhouettes are the classic triangular shapes that children draw when they draw forests, narrow at the top to shed snow, dense and dark below. The floor of these forests is carpeted with moss and fallen needles, soft underfoot with a springiness that comes from the accumulated organic matter of generations of trees. The light that reaches the forest floor has passed through many layers of needles and branches. By the time it arrives, it is soft and green, the kind of light that exists only inside a forest. As you move higher, the trees begin to thin. The spruce slowly give way to subalpine fir, smaller and more twisted trees shaped by years of heavy snow and cold mountain winds. Climb higher and eventually the trees disappear altogether. The landscape opens into the alpine zone, a place above the tree line where the growing season lasts only 8 or 10 weeks. The plants that live here survive by staying low and close to the ground, holding on to warmth and shelter. And when the brief summer arrives, they bloom quickly and brightly, making the most of the short time nature allows. In summer, the alpine meadows are full of wildflowers, and they're not shy about it. Their colors are bright and bold, as if they know the season is short and they have to make the most of it. Purple lupin spreads in big swaths. Yellow cinquefoil catches the sun and Jacob's ladder shines pale blue. Moss campion hugs the rocks, pink and thick enough to look almost solid. Standing in a meadow like this with sky wide and blue above and flowers at your feet, cold wind coming off the snow, there's a feeling that's hard to put into words. It's the sense that you're exactly where you're meant to be. A quiet pause from wanting to be anywhere else. The grizzlies have a way of doing that. Up in the high passes of Ambarino, snow can linger well into summer. Some years it never fully melts. It's old snow packed down over many winters, firm and heavy under your feet. Walking on it feels different than fresh snow, carrying a sense of all the winters it has seen. And here sits the old mining camp of Coulter, mostly empty now. It was built about 20 years ago, when silver was discovered in the cliffs. Men came with tools and hope, leaving their old lives behind. The camp was never big. Maybe 40 or 50 men at most, working in the summer, waiting out harsh winters in the simple buildings they built. But the silver didn't last. The winters were harder than expected. One by one, the men left. Eventually, even the caretaker went and the camp was quiet. The buildings still stand. Boards are warped. Windows are empty. A door hangs crooked, swinging slowly in the wind. Inside, a ledger sits open on a desk, pages wavy and ink faded. Names, numbers, the memory of the work done here, all still there. In winter, snow softens everything. It piles against the walls, fills the doorways and windows, hides the cracks and wear. The camp looks almost gentle under all that white. Sometimes wolves wander through from the cliffs above. They don't care about the buildings. The structures are just part of the landscape. Their tracks appear in the snow, along with tiny prints of mice and voles, and then the wind comes and erases them, leaving the snow smooth again. From the ridge above Coulter, the view stretches forever. Peaks fade into blue haze. Forests spill down the slopes. On a clear day, you might even see a glimpse of water far off. Maybe Flatiron Lake, 50 miles away. Most days, no one is here to see it. And maybe that's the best part. The world isn't just for people. It was here long before us, and it will be here long after. Most of its beauty is seen only by the animals that live here. Hawks riding the wind, elk grazing at dawn, marmots watching quietly from their burrows. Even when no one is looking, the mountains catch the morning light. Shadows move across the snow. Colors shift. Wind moves through the grasses. Snowflakes sparkle. The world doesn't perform for anyone, and somehow that makes it feel more alive than anything else. Come down from the mountains and feel the air grow warmer and thicker. The trees thin out, the grasslands open up, and something in your body relaxes. The sky suddenly feels twice as big as it did in the forest. The heartlands of New Hanover are wide and open grass country. If you look closely, the grass vary enormously, all finding their own place. Tall bluestem and switchgrass rise to your knees, their seed heads glowing in the sunlight. Below them, shorter fescues and buffalo grass form a dense green carpet. Between the grass stems, wildflowers peek through. Lavender clusters of wild bergamot, bright yellow black-eyed Susans, and the white blooms of yarrow. The meadows are alive with insects. Grasshoppers spring into the air with a click. Bees, honeybees, bumblebees, and dozens of native species move from flower to flower with purpose, and it's oddly comforting to watch. Butterflies drift across the field, bold orange and black monarchs, yellow swallowtails, tiny blue butterflies whose names you probably don't know, but whose colors feel just right. A meadowlark sings from the top of a fence post. Pause for a moment, and the meadowlark's song is one of the defining sounds of the American grassland. The bird isn't large. It's about the size of a robin, but its voice carries for half a mile on a still morning. Clear and flute-like, liquid notes flow in phrases that feel spontaneous, yet perfectly complete. Listening to the meadowlark here almost feels like the bird is commenting on the landscape. Sings, pauses, then sings again. The grass sways gently. The sun moves slowly across the sky. Nothing else happens. This is the heartlands on an ordinary morning, calm and wide and steady. The pronghorn also live here. They're among the most remarkable animals on these plains. Pronghorns are built for speed. They can reach 50 to 60 miles per hour, second only to the cheetah. Their speed evolved long ago, when predators even faster than cheetahs roamed North America. Today, it's a leftover memory of danger, an adaptation that has outlasted its cause. Watching a pronghorn run is mesmerizing. Their legs move in a rhythm almost mechanical yet effortless. They can keep up high speeds for miles. No predator here can match them over distance. They also have incredible vision. Their eyes sit wide on their heads, giving them almost a 360-degree view. A pronghorn grazing in the open can see threats coming from almost any direction. Picture a small band on the heartlands at dawn. A buck with short pronged horns, 3 does, and their fawns, still dappled from birth. They graze carefully while keeping their heads up as much as down, alert and loosely coordinated. Then, some subtle cue, a shift in the wind or something, and the buck lifts his head. The doe follows. The fawns pause. And then, in a single fluid motion, they take off, running across the plain like water flowing, disappearing over the rise. Moments later, the grassland is calm again. The heartlands are also home to cattle ranches. Hereford and Longhorn cattle move slowly through the grass. They are the product of generations of careful breeding, calm, steady, and productive. They graze, resting in the heat of the day, swishing their tails against flies. Ranch hands move among them on horseback, checking animals, counting the herd, guiding stragglers back. This work takes skill. Reading the cattle, anticipating their movements, sometimes seeing trouble a few seconds before it happens. Those few seconds can make the difference between calm control and a long chase across the plains. The horses are remarkable too. Mostly quarter horses, as they are strong, agile, fast to react, and deeply in tune with their riders. Years of working together create a quiet understanding. Small shifts of weight, leg, or hand produce a response so seamless it almost seems like magic. And perhaps, in a way, it is. Let us walk through Valentine on a Wednesday morning in autumn. The air is cool. The summer heat has broken at last, and the mornings have that particular crispness that makes the light different. It is somehow more angled and more golden. The leaves of the cottonwoods along the river are turning yellow. The grass is brown and dry, and when the wind moves through it, there is a papery rattling sound that is one of the signature sounds of autumn on the plains. Main Street is beginning its day. Hector the blacksmith opened his forge at 6. The sound of the hammer on iron is carried on the cool air to the far end of the street. He has 2 horses to shoe today and a wagon wheel that needs a new iron tire. He also has a commission for a set of hinges from the new hotel being built to the north of town. It is a full day's work. He begins with the horses because the horses have owners waiting, and the hinges can wait. The hotel restaurant opens at 7. May has been there since 5, making biscuits and the filling for the pies. The smell of butter and bread and the complex savory depth of long-cooked stock that emerge from the kitchen begins to reach the street by 6:30, and for anyone who is out early and hungry, they are enormously persuasive. Cecil, the lamplighter, has been home for an hour, having finished his rounds in the last of the dark. He is the last person still awake from the night before and the first person asleep as the day begins. He sleeps in a room above the barber shop, a small room with a window that faces east, which he keeps curtained. On his bedside table is a glass of water, a novel he is midway through, and a small china dish in which he places his pocket watch while he sleeps. The watch ticks. The curtain holds the morning light. Cecil sleeps, with the deep sound of a man who has been up since midnight and has earned his rest. By 8, the main street is alive. The general store has been open since 7:30. Mr. Patterson, who owns it, is a man in his 60s who came to Valentine from Ohio 20 years ago, and still occasionally seems slightly surprised to find himself here. He runs a store that is well-stocked, fairly priced, and with an ordering system for things he doesn't carry. He knows most of his customers by name and many of them by their purchasing habits, which reveals more about a person than they might expect. He can tell by someone's weekly order how their life is going. He is discreet about this knowledge. He considers it a confidence, the information implied by someone's purchases. He has never mentioned it to anyone. The post office, a single room at the back of the telegraph office, receives its daily delivery at 9. The mail comes in on a wagon from Emerald Ranch, where the main postal distribution operates. 3 times a week there are letters for residents of Valentine, and the distribution of these letters bring a small daily drama. Some receive news from family back east, some are still waiting for a reply, and some pause for a moment before opening theirs, gathering themselves for whatever the message might say. Miss Clary, a young school teacher from Virginia, has been in town for 2 years. She came with a teaching certificate and a determination to build a life beyond the limited options for educated women back east. At 10 minutes to 8, She walks up the main street with her books under her arm. She teaches 12 children, ages 6 to 14, in the one-room schoolhouse at the east end of town. She is a good teacher, genuinely caring about her students and the subjects she teaches, which makes her unusual. This morning, she is thinking about the history lesson she has planned for the afternoon. She has been trying to teach her older students about the people who lived on this land before the settlers arrived, a topic the school board finds controversial, but one she believes is essential. She has gathered books, written to universities for materials, and collected what she can. It's incomplete, she knows, but better than leaving the topic out entirely. She unlocks the schoolhouse, steps inside, and lights the small stove before the children arrive. Meanwhile, the saloon in Valentine won't open until 10. On most weekday mornings, the first hour is quiet. A few ranch hands nursing coffee or something stronger, a traveling salesman who likes the saloon's lively feel, and occasionally someone who just wants a place to sit outside their own home. The piano in the corner usually stays quiet until the afternoon. It's a surprisingly good instrument, better than the saloon itself might suggest, a reflection of the priorities of its previous owner. The current owner, who bought the saloon 3 years ago, can't play. To him, the piano is just part of the furniture, like the bar or the bottles. But sometimes the piano comes alive. On a Saturday night when the right person sits down, or on a quiet weekday afternoon when a regular musician drifts in, the piano fills the room with music. The sound changes the air. Conversations pause. And for a moment, the saloon in Valentine, New Hanover, 1899, feels connected to every place and time where music has made ordinary spaces feel extraordinary. West of town, by the river, a boy named Samuel is fishing. He's 11 and has been fishing since he was 5. Over 6 years on the Dakota River, he's learned its ways almost by instinct. He knows where the fish are at different times, what bait works in each season, and that the big catfish in the deep pool at the river bend are most active on cloudy afternoons. He's been at it for 2 hours and hasn't caught anything yet, but that doesn't bother him. For Samuel, fishing is as much about being at the river as it is about the fish. The sound of the water, the feel of the riverbank, the things that happen here and nowhere else. A kingfisher, brilliant blue, darting just above the water, gone before you fully see it. An otter downstream, slipping in and out of the river with effortless grace. Samuel watches it all. If asked why he loves the river, he'd probably just say it's good for fishing. But really, the fishing is almost secondary. It is evening. We've been in different locations over the months. Beside rivers in New Hanover, in the forested hills above Lemoyne, in the meadows of West Elizabeth. Tonight it is at Horseshoe Overlook, and the view from the ridge above the camp looks out over the heartlands in the last of the evening light. The grass turned gold, the river a dark line threading through it, and above everything the sky in its long, slow transition from blue to green, to gold to the deep rose red of the last light. The camp has been here long enough to feel settled. The wagon positions are familiar. The paths between tent and fire and cook station are worn into the earth by repeated passage. The fire ring is surrounded by logs that have been dragged to serve as seating, and the seating arrangement has acquired its own social geography. Pearson has finished supper service. The pot is scrubbed, the serving dishes put away, the fire banked down to a steady moderate burn that will last for hours. He is sitting on his particular log with a pipe, which he smokes in the evening as one of his few concessions to pleasure. He doesn't talk much in the evenings. He listens. He finds the conversations of 30-odd people, after long days of writing and working, to be deeply interesting in aggregate even when they are individually unremarkable. Javier has his guitar. He plays the way he does most evenings, not performing exactly, but not absent either. He sits on a flat rock near the fire and plays with a looseness that comes from doing something so well for so long that it no longer requires conscious effort. The music emerges from him the way breathing does, naturally, without any hint of performance, serving its own purposes. Tonight he is playing something slow, a melody that has its roots in the music he grew up with in Mexico, the folk songs of the interior, the corridos that tell stories, the slow waltz-time songs that older women sang at celebrations when he was a boy. He has adapted this music to fit the different contexts of his life. He has blended it with things he has heard since, and what comes out now is something that belongs entirely to him. The sound of it moves through the camp with the smoke from the fire. People talk more quietly when Javier plays. Some listen actively. Some simply absorb it the way you absorb warmth. Hosea Matthews is reading. He has found a collected edition of Tennyson at a general store in Valentine. Battered and water-stained on the lower corner, but entirely readable. He reads with the particular focus of someone for whom reading is a necessity rather than a leisure. It's not compulsive exactly, but deeply satisfying in the way that food is satisfying when you are hungry. He has a favorite poem in this collection. He has read it many times before in other editions, but he reads it again tonight in the firelight. The words are familiar and still moving in the way that things you love stay moving no matter how many times you return to them. He reads quietly, his lips barely moving, his face in the firelight showing something that is not quite emotion and not quite its absence, an expression of a person who is fully present to what they are experiencing, which is perhaps the most complete form of human attention. Mary Beth is writing. She writes in the evening when she can, in a journal that has become something more than a journal. More organized, more deliberate, and moving towards something she hasn't named yet, but can feel in the way the writing feels different from ordinary diary entries. She writes about people, about conversations she has overheard or been part of, about places they have been. Tonight she is writing about the Heartlands at dawn. They rode through it last week. She and Tilly and Karen, on an errand to Valentine, and the morning had been extraordinary. The light, the sound, and the quality of the air. She is trying to capture it in writing, which means finding the words for the sensory experience of dawn on the plains, which is like trying to hold water in your hands. Some of it escapes. Some of it stays. She is getting better at this. She can feel herself getting better. Tilly, beside her, is mending a shirt. They talk occasionally, easy, comfortable talk, the talk of people who know each other well enough not to need to fill every silence. When they do talk, it is directly, honestly, with the ease of a relationship built on genuine affection and genuine respect. At the edge of camp, away from the fire, Arthur Morgan sits with his journal. He has been drawing. The view from the ridge, the one that looks out over the Heartlands in the last light. He has been attempting to capture the particular quality of the light on the grass, which is something that the pencil is not ideally suited for. It is about color as much as form, about the warmth of the gold light against the blue-green of the distant hills, and pencil can only suggest this. He draws anyway. He always draws anyway. The drawing is not for any eventual viewer or of any particular purpose. The sustained looking at something and thinking that it requires to be put on paper, the concentrated attention and the way drawing forces you to actually see what is in front of you rather than what you think is in front of you. Arthur has, in the years of keeping this journal, learned to see more carefully than he once did. The landscape that he moves through daily has revealed itself to be far more detailed, more varied, more interesting than he initially perceived. He notices things now that he did not notice before. The way light changes on water through the course of a morning, the behavior of birds that can be read like a weather forecast if you know what to look for, the small things at his feet that a person in a hurry would step over, the perfect geometry of a spider's web with morning dew on it, the iridescent carapace of a beetle on a leaf, the way moss grows in a pattern that follows moisture. He fills pages with these things. Pages and pages. The journal is nearly full. This one is his 5th or 6th he has kept. He will need a new one soon. At the bottom of his drawing of the heartlands, he writes, "Rode out past the river this morning before the others were up. The light was something I can't describe right. Like the world was made out of honey. I sat on a rock and just looked at it for a while and I thought, I don't know what I thought. I thought this is a good place. I thought I would like to stay here longer than we will." He closes the journal. The fire has burned lower. Most of the camp is quiet now, sleeping or nearly sleeping, the ordinary sounds of people settling into unconsciousness. A shift, a murmur, the deep, slow breath of genuine sleep. The horses are on the picket line behind the camp. Most of them are resting, weight on 3 legs, heads low and eyes half closed. A horse at rest makes almost no sound, only the occasional quiet exhalation, a soft snort, the flicker of an ear responding to some insect. They are warm and present, large animals at peace, and their presence at the edge of camp is a kind of comfort. The fire settles. A log shifts and sends up a brief fountain of sparks that rise and cool and disappear before they fall. Above the camp, the stars. There is an hour before dawn that belongs to no one. The night has mostly finished its work. The people who stayed awake, the ones who could not sleep or whose thoughts kept them up, have finally settled. And the ones who rise early to open the forge, ride the range, or set out on the river have not yet woken. For this brief stretch of time, the world is as quiet as it ever gets. In the bayou, even the frogs have fallen silent. The insects of the night are finished. The birds of the day have not yet begun. The water moves slowly through the cypress trees. Somewhere a drop falls from a branch into the still water below. A faint breeze moves through the reeds. On a mud bank nearby, an alligator lies exactly where it rested the evening before. It breathes slowly, deeply, its long body still in the dark. White egrets sleep in the roost trees above the water, standing on thin legs with their heads tucked beneath their wings. Far away in the mountain passes, the cold night sits heavy over the snow. The high ridges glow faintly blue beneath the stars. In a den, above Coulter, a pack of wolves sleeps in a close pile, sharing warmth against the long mountain night. Out on the plains, the pronghorn rest in the open grassland. Even in sleep they remain alert, their bodies low to the ground, their wide eyes able to see danger long before it arrives. But in this hour before dawn, nothing moves across the plains except the wind in the grass. At Horseshoe Overlook, the camp sleeps. Beside his bedroll, Arthur's journal lies open. The last page holds a rough drawing of the heartlands. Tall grass, distant hills, and a sky he tried to capture with light strokes of pencil. In the margin he wrote that the light was hard to describe. Slowly, the eastern horizon begins to change. At first the change is subtle, more of a feeling than something easily seen. The darkness softens. Then a deep blue appears along the horizon, separating the sky from the darker land below. One by one, the stars begin to fade. The faint ones disappear first. The brighter ones linger a little longer. Venus shining low in the east, Jupiter still hanging high above, until they too are swallowed by the growing light. Then the birds begin. A single song sparrow calls from the grass below the ridge. A short phrase, then silence. Then the sound again. A robin answers from the tree line. Within moments the quiet breaks open as more voices join in. Meadowlarks, blackbirds, sparrows, robins, each adding its own note to the rising chorus. It is the sound of the world waking up. The sun finally clears the horizon. Light spreads across the heartlands, turning the tall grass warm and gold. The surface of the Dakota River catches the light and flashes bright. Long shadows stretch west from every tree, every fence post, every rock in the field. A hawk launches from a dead tree near the river bend and rises slowly into the morning air. In Valentine, alarm clocks begin to ring. In kitchens and barns, the first work of the day begins. At Horseshoe Overlook, the camp starts to stir. Pearson is already awake at the fire, heating water for coffee. The smell of wood smoke drifts through the cool morning air. Arthur has been awake for some time. He closes his journal and watches the light spread across the plains below the overlook. It is a clear morning, the kind hunters prefer. Before long he rises, saddles his horse, and rides out from camp with Hosea. The two men head east into the heartlands, where the deer move through the tall grass in the early light. The sky is only just beginning to lighten when Arthur and Hosea leave camp. A thin gray mist hangs low over the heartlands, drifting slowly through the tall grass. The world feels half asleep. Somewhere in the distance a meadowlark calls once, then falls quiet again. Hosea rides slightly ahead, his posture relaxed but his eyes always moving across the land. Arthur follows a few yards behind, letting his horse walk at an easy pace. They have been riding for nearly half an hour before Hosea finally slows. "All right?" he says quietly, raising a hand. Arthur stops beside him. The grass here grows thick and knee-high, bending softly in the morning breeze. Beyond it sits a small line of cottonwood trees, their leaves barely moving in the still air. Hosea studies the ground for a moment. "Deer come through this way most mornings," he says. "Usually a buck or two trailing behind the does." Arthur glances across the open field. "You sure about that?" Hosea chuckles softly. "Son, I've been following deer tracks since before you learned how to hold a rifle." Arthur smirks but doesn't argue. They dismount and tie their horses to a nearby tree. The animals settle quickly, lowering their heads to graze while the men move forward on foot. The grass muffles their steps as they walk. Hosea stops after a few yards and crouches down, brushing a hand over the dirt. He says, "Look at this." Arthur kneels beside him. Two sets of hoof prints are pressed into the damp earth. Arthur can tell they belong to a deer, but beyond that, they look like any other tracks. "Buck," Hosea says. And a decent one too. To which Arthur says, "You can tell that from this?" "Yes, son," Hosea replies simply. They continue moving through the grass. Slower now. Every step is careful. Arthur keeps his rifle loose in his hands. The sun finally breaks the horizon, sending warm light across the plains. The mist begins to lift, revealing the open country stretching for miles in every direction. After a while, Hosea lifts his hand again. Arthur freezes. Through a thin gap in the grass, a shape moves near the edge of the trees. A buck. He's large, standing tall with a wide rack of antlers that catch the morning light. For now he seems calm, grazing slowly, unaware of the two hunters watching him from the field. Arthur raises his rifle slightly. "Easy," Hosea whispers behind him. Arthur lowers it again. "You rush a shot like that," Hosea continues quietly, "you'll miss clean or wound the poor thing. Neither does anybody any good." The buck lifts its head briefly, ears twitching. Then it returns to grazing. Arthur takes a slow breath. The wind shifts gently across the plains, carrying their scent away from the animal. "All right," Hosea murmurs. "Now you can try." Arthur raises the rifle again, resting it against his shoulder. The world seems to narrow around the sight of the gun. The buck moves slowly, stepping forward through the grass. Arthur waits. The animal turns slightly, giving a clear angle. Arthur squeezes the trigger. The rifle cracks across the quiet morning. The buck drops almost instantly. For a moment the sound echoes across the plains, rolling away into the distance. Then the land grows quiet again. Arthur lowers the rifle. "Well," Hosea says after a moment, standing up beside him. "That'll do." They walk across the field toward the fallen animal. Up close, the buck is even larger than Arthur expected. Its coat shines reddish-brown in the sunlight, and its antlers spread wide like branches. Hosea studies it for a moment, nodding slightly. "Clean shot," he says. "That's how it ought to be." Arthur kneels down beside the animal. "Guess I had a good teacher." Hosea smiles faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe you finally decided to listen for once." Arthur laughs quietly. They work in silence for a while, preparing the animal so they can bring it back to camp. The morning has fully arrived now. The mist has burned away, leaving the sky wide and blue above the open plains. Somewhere far off, a small herd of pronghorn moves across the horizon. Arthur looks up at them for a moment. "Ever get tired of this?" he asks. Hosea glances across the land. "Of hunting," Arthur nods. Hosea thinks about it for a moment. "No," he says finally. "Truth is, most things in life get complicated sooner or later. Hunting's one of the few that don't." He gestures toward the open country around them. "You come out here. You move quiet. You pay attention. Sometimes you get something. Sometimes you don't." Arthur wipes his hands and stands up. "And that's enough?" Hosea smiles slightly. "Most days, yeah." The wind moves through the tall grass again, carrying the quiet sounds of the heartlands across the plains. And for a little while, neither of them says anything more. In the years to come, the world will change. The frontier will close. Not dramatically, not with any single event, but slowly, the way light fades in the evening. You don't see the moment it goes, only that it has gone. The land will be measured and fenced. The towns will grow, some of them into cities. The automobile will replace the horse on the main streets of Valentine and Blackwater and St. Denis. Electric lights will come to places that have never known artificial light, and the night sky will begin its long, slow dimming. The bison will not return. The pronghorn will persist. The meadowlarks will persist. The rivers will continue to run, though some of them will be dammed and changed and managed in ways that Thomas, the fisherman, would not recognize. The people will age and change and scatter. Some will stay. Some will go. Some will build the lives they were moving toward. Some will find that life went differently than they planned, which is what life does, reliably and without apology. The journals, if they survive, if they are kept, if someone finds them and values them, will record a world that is passing. The careful drawings of mountains and rivers and birds. The brief, honest sentences of a man trying to understand his own life while he is living it. The world does not pause for this. The world continues. The grass grows and is moved by the wind. The rivers run. The stars turn. The birds sing at dawn over the heartlands, and over the bayou, and over the mountain passes, and over the plains, as they have always sung, as they will continue to sing. The alligator rests on its mud bank. The beaver tends its dam. The pronghorn watch the horizon with their extraordinary eyes. The world is not waiting for us. It does not need us to witness it. But it is here when we arrive, and it is here when we are gone, and in the meantime, on the mornings when we can stop and be present to it, on the mornings when we can simply sit with the river or the sky or the grass and let it be what it is enough. It has always been enough. Sleep now. The camp is quiet. The fire is coals. The night sky turns above everything. The rivers are running as they always run. The mountains are exactly where they have always been. The birds will sing at dawn. They will sing without us, and that is all right. They will sing for us if we are there to hear it, and that is something. You have traveled far tonight, across plains and mountains and bayous and rivers, through towns and camps and quiet mornings. The world is large and it is old. Let the world continue without your watching over it. It knows what it is doing. It has known for a very long time. Now, rest.